Good afternoon, good evening, all. Hope you're doing well today. It is Wednesday. We're halfway through the week already, and more importantly, we are back with Dark and Disturbing. It is our monthly trip down the, let's say, darker path of YouTube, and I can't think of anybody to take the journey with than author extraordinaire Adega Outlaw. How are you doing?
See, she only brings me out when it's dark and disturbing. Kind of makes me paranoid. Yeah. Oh my word. Actually doing pretty good. How about yourself? Do people ask you that when they come onto your channel? How are you doing?
They do sometimes, yeah, actually, yes. And I never know how to answer. It always kind of throws me. It's like, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, good work. Yeah. You have a wonderful chat full of wonderful people, and they all want to know how you are doing because they came here to see you, not the clown over here on the right side of the screen.
I beg to differ, but I would at the same time never argue with Adega because Adega knows best, as always.
Thank you. And I win every argument, almost every argument. My wife would disagree. She always says, if you think you're right, just ask me. So I have to capitulate there. It's a matter of survival.
Wise words. Before we jump into this week's, well, this month's even topic, which is going to be all about cults and kind of the background of cults and how people get enticed into them, let me say hi to everybody. So we have got Brandon the anime guy. Great to see you. Rod Thunderheart, hello, sir. Good to see you. D-Bud Martin, a warm welcome to you. We've got Psychodwarf 9. No love. Keely Chow. Hello, Keely. Let's see. We've got Salty Texas. Great to see you. We've got the lovely Gun Bunny. Hey, sweetheart. We've got Southern Viking. Hail to you. Good to see you. Good evening to that shouldn't be. Hey there. Good to see you. We've got Leia Rose. Hello, sweetheart. Good afternoon to you. Let's see, make sure I'm not missing anybody. I think I get everybody. No, Zachary I missed earlier. And a Polymese Minion. Hello, lovely. Good to see you as well. And Blaine's Escape Corner. Hey there. Welcome. So we do what we usually do every time Dark and Disturbing rolls around. We kind of get together and try to come up with a really good topic in the genre of true crime. We've talked about true crime in general. That was the first episode, and then we went on to more detail and we went into male serial killers. Now this time I wanted to kind of delve in a slightly different direction and talk cults.
Yes, the house of sick people, where demented people lose their sanity.
Yes. And doing a bit of research into this topic, I didn't realize just how many high profile cults there have been. And I know you've got some great ones as well to bring up. But even recently, we've had some in the news. I mean, we've got the obviously very famous ones, which we'll talk about later on. Things like Manson family and Heaven's Gate and the Branch Davidians. But you've got a couple for us as well, haven't you, Adega?
Well, one of them actually is tied into Charles Manson. Even his cult or his church or what have you took their name from it. But yeah, I do have a couple. And you got a sticker from someone you forgot to say hi to.
I do indeed. So a big thank you to Salty Texas C. Great to see you. As always, he sends us a little devil face super sticker. Very, very apt. So thank you for that. Much appreciated. And let me say hello also to Eastland Burkholder. Great to see you. Hello, lovely. Hope you're doing well. So, would you like to kick things off for us, Adega? Because as you say, the ones that you found are kind of tied into some of the other ones.
Well, the second one I want to get into it's a pretty powerful group. We'll save that one for last if we get to it. But the main one I wanted to cover, because they started in your neck of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the early 60s, there was a group. I was trying to remember the founders' names. It was two people. Let's see if I can look it up real quick. They were both Scientologists. And also members of the GETTR. It was a Ron Hubbard type thing. So they eventually, part of what goes on with Scientology, as far as I know, I was never a member, but you have people that get out of there, and some of them will embellish the truth, some of them will lie, and some of them will tell you exactly how it is. So anytime you hear something from any group that says, oh, I was part of it, always assume that they're only telling you a little bit of the truth. So what we understand from Scientology, solid evidence, because the machines and some of the other things, even their own promotional, is they would do things where they call them, I can't remember the actual name of the session, but they'd be one-on-one, and they would use a machine. It was kind of their version of a lie detector, where they're getting people to confess, even though some of the things they confessed they didn't do. It just to make them what they would call clear, so they freed themselves from all these burdens. Well, there was this one woman, and again, I forgot her name, but she was really good at it. She knew how to milk people for information, whether they believed it or not. And she ran into a guy who pursued her down, and they eventually became cuck and wife, because in the true sense of the word, yeah, because she pretty much had her way with anybody she wanted, and he was along for the ride. So they eventually said, we're too big for these organizations, the OTO or Scientology, and they set up the process of the Church of Final Judgment, which had several other names, like the Final Church, which is what Charles Manson used, because he ran into them later on, but we'll get that. When they were in England, they had set up a couple of things, a coffee shop, and they were delivering periodicals that they would write and sell. Some of their tenants, some of the images you can find as it is now, they, very, very odd, but as of all cults are, but theirs was peculiar because their tenant had no exclusionaries when it came to the Christianity gods, except they put Satan on a highest pedestal, and they have Christ, the Messiah, all of them that were all part of the same, instead of being diametrical opposites. So they worshiped them all. But in the process of worshiping Satan, they did some pretty horrible things, even in England. Unfortunately, you guys are smart enough to chase him out. They child prostitution. They did, in some texts, they had human sacrifice, cannibalism, various other bizarre things. But they also had a coffee shop where they invited people in. It became, yeah, I know.
As you do, exactly.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. But it was actually quite successful because there was a lot of the music scene back then. Mamas and the Papas group. Mick Jagger, I think.
Yes, and this seems to be something that it's prevalent, especially with the music scene, as you say, and we've seen it so many times with Hollywood as well. And as we kind of go in further into this subject, we'll bring up quite a few that Hollywood have kind of dabbled in, and Scientology, you mentioned especially, seems to be something that the rich and famous fall into quite easily.
Right. There's something about being in these type of groups, whether it be music group or political groups or what have you, where the connection with, and someone had said, I'm sorry, maybe it was, let me see if I could see who it is. Maybe it was Blaine, but they talked about it's the place where the lost people go. And sometimes it's emotional loss. And when you're in the limelight, it's easy to happen. Your identity gets lost and they find it again in these groups. And that was the same thing with this coffee shop, Satan's coffee shop. They would come in and it became a trendy place to be for a lot of these people. There were some significant, I think Parliament, every single one in Parliament was getting whether they wanted it or not. They're periodicals. And so they were using this as a way, a vehicle to spread their influence. And for a while, it was kind of successful. But eventually, people started taking notice of what these people were doing. And they got so impoverished because no one was buying their stuff, no one would support them, that where else would you go when you got nowhere else to go? You go to San Francisco. So that's where they went.
Exactly. Just before we continue, let me say once more a big thank you to Salty Texas, who sent us another super sticker, and this time it's a face and looks like it's screaming. So thank you for that, Salty. Much appreciated.
Do we do that to you, Salty? Do we send in the madness?
And yeah, Nosferatu, you are absolutely right. This is something that we see all the time, and we don't generally, especially on Rise and Shine, kind of delve into these sort of topics, but this is exactly what I wanted to do with Dark and Disturbing. I wanted to kind of shine a light on the darker side of humanity, and this is exactly what we want to cover. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
It's funny he brought that up, because the next one I've got is going to tie into that a little bit. But we were in San Francisco, and this is where he meets up, or the group meet up with a guy who decides to take a lot of interest in their group, and that is, I'm trying to remember the other one's name, because there was more than just the one group. I can't remember his name. He was the Church of Satan at the time. All at the same place, weren't even that far apart from each other. Some of you will know his name. He was quite a famous guy, but Manson hung out with them, hung out with the Church of Final Judgment, Process of Final Judgment, and that's where he started. I think there was some CIA stuff in there, but I won't get into that today. But he was an offshoot from this group. And I have a picture here of Mary Tyler Moore standing with one of those people. They had these little satanic symbols on their black coats, and she's holding a one of their periodicals. And on the front of the periodical, it has this. It's like a half-cut swastika, and it has the process and has naked people on it, and it says Lucifer, Satan, Jehovah, the key gray forces, 3 paths, and a quagmire. So yeah, but even, she got crap for holding that. And of course, Charles Manson, you know where he went. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think the chat's got it. Anton LaVey. Thank you, guys.
That's the one. That is the one. Yep. So they were all partying in the same city at the same time, doing all kinds of nefarious, horrible acts, as well as lots of drugs.
And ironically, this all took place in the Summer of Love, if I remember correctly. But the one thing that we do see with a lot of these cults, and especially the ones that kind of sprung up around this time, it was very kind of theatrical. So they talked a good talk, but at the end of the day, it was all about gaining control over people. So they would talk about, worshipping Satan and wanting to change the world and having this grand idea of what they wanted to do. But at the heart of it, and at the heart of pretty much most cults, it is all about either control over people, or it is about getting as much money as possible out of people.
Right. Except you have a few nuts and fruits involved. The woman who was the head of this group, she was extremely controlling, and caused some rifts. There was some other issues that went on, because people started noticing that there were other Hollywood influences and other things that were happening with this group. He was also involved with Manson. He's now in Europe because of charges that were here. One of you will know his name. He was a director
Yeah,
Very,
Roman Polanski. Yes.
yeah.
Hmm.
All these people were tied into this, and the American people got mad. I think the FBI, there was some local uh, issues with the police force. Eventually, they did not go away. They just changed their name and settled in a little town in Utah. And now they call them the Animal Friendship Society. And they're supposed to be an animal shelter. And what most people don't realize is this animal shelter, Dave Bob's heard all this before.
Hmm.
This little animal shelter, these people used to do animal sacrifice, and now they're sheltering animals. There has never been any audit done with this building. They're given the lowest rating of a charity group, meaning they have, there's no controls. No one goes in to see where the money goes. No one goes in to see how the animals are doing, where they're going. But they'll have pictures of celebrities who donate animals or pick them up.
Hmm.
They're still dark, sinister, and in my opinion, something that shouldn't exist. But that's mine. Church of Final Judgment, who had influence on a lot of people in a lot of places, and really terrible.
Yes, and I think a lot of people don't realize that just how far this actually stems back, as you say, because this was pretty much a forerunner for a lot of these big kind of cults that sprung up in the 60s. And I think even more people will be very surprised that they're still in effect today. And as you correctly said, as a in quotations, animal sanctuary
Right,
shelter.
right. Bring us your animals. Yes.
Yes, absolutely nothing could possibly go wrong there.
Right.
Before we jump into the next one, which is another recent one that I have found, I'm just going to say hello. We've got a few people that have joined. We've got Zax, great to see you, Zax. We've got Rabid Slug, ouchies, hello,
I love
great
that
to see you. It's wonderful, isn't it? And we've got the lovely Lady Mist, hello, sweetheart, great to see you as always. Guys, you are on fire in the chat today, so thank you. If I don't manage to grab all of your comments, I will contact you guys after the show, so thank you. The one that I was going to bring up today, I will share because I think it's one that most people will be quite familiar with because it's one of the more recent ones. So this is the one that's been in the news quite in the last year. So this is Nixon. Um,
one.
so we have obviously the head and founder, who was Keith Raniere, and he was accused of running an abusive sex cult through his Albany-based seminar company. There's quite a lot more to this, but I think once they started to unravel and realized who was actually involved with this, I think this story absolutely exploded. And it's still kind of ongoing, if I remember correctly. So this started. He was arrested back in 2017. Basically, they did an expose trying to show what was going on with this cult. Now, originally, it wasn't supposed to be a cult. People just thought he was running a kind of a seminar for people. It was like a self-help group. We've seen this so many times before, especially in the 90s. I think that was a big deal, all these self-help gurus that pops up. But he was much more sinister than that, and he had some very high-profile people involved, including the disgraced Smallville actress Alison Mack, who was arrested, and she was implicated in recruiting people into this cult, and especially women, convincing them to join and saying that they were, going to be part of this empowered group, and it was going to help them, stand up for themselves. But no, what actually happened is they were sex trafficked and they were branded, if I remember correctly, as well.
Yes. Yes. They had his initials stamped into their pelvis
Hmm.
uh, on the front, just low and to the left of the belly button. It had his initials on there.
Yes, and that's something that's quite unusual because with a lot of the cults that we will talk about, that's one step that a lot of them didn't do, kind of something to prove that the people actually wanted to be a part of it. Usually, they have to either give up all of their belongings, or they, in the case of somewhere like the People's Jim Jones. They had to move and set up this commune, but these guys, they actually had to be branded. It's such a bizarre thing to actually submit to. But let's have a look. See, so there was a lot more to this. Again, it was ongoing as of 2018. He faced new charges, including exploiting children and pornography. And he, in October 2020, was sentenced to 120 years in prison. So clearly a vile, despicable person. And Alison Mack didn't get off free either. So she got 3 years for her role in the court, in the cult, and has pretty much, she's completely disgraced, as she should be. But I think most people were incredibly surprised that somebody like her would actually do the things that she was found guilty of.
Yeah, it was pretty dark what they did. They would isolate the women that were being initiated and say, "Oh, everyone goes through this," and they would show them some pretty dark stuff,
Mm-hmm.
break them emotionally, and pretty much that's what they did. When they had them broken emotionally, then they would build them back up, but they would build them back up to what they wanted, to where they were filmed nude, doing weird things. And of course, once they have you on film, which I'm going to, and Nesferatu, it seems like he knows about this too.
Mm-hmm.
They have you, and the branding would follow along with all the other depravities. So yeah, I I am not one to hesitate. I will argue with anyone that death penalty is warranted, and it is not as a punishment.
Mm-hmm.
It is as an example to society and a release of the burden from or for society of degenerate. It has nothing to do with punishment. It has something to do with protecting society and showing every future generation that when you go across certain boundaries, you're done. And to be a person like this, where they've destroyed so many lives, especially children, when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to children, I have no hesitation on saying you are done. But 120 years, maybe he'll make someone a good girlfriend in prison.
We can but hope. And this one
Oh,
I found especially bizarre because it was in many ways very similar to the cult that Manson had around him, in that he had a lot of female lieutenants below him. So Keith Raniere had people, women like Nancy Salzman, Lauren Salzman, Claire Bronfman, I believe was the other one. And then it kind of went down, but there was a lot of high profile women that were his kind of second in command, which was a kind of weird one, I always thought. And all of these people obviously knew exactly what was going on, so it's incredibly sinister. And I think this is one of the ones that really kind of shone a light on how corrupt Hollywood actually is.
right, right. But it's been that way for a very long time. You know me, I understand. I've been around, I've studied, I've known people. This Hollywood stuff has been since its founding in the old black and white films. There are things that you can find that these people should have never been allowed to lie today.
Hmm. Absolutely. And as much as we kind of do delve into this, and as much research as we can possibly do, there's probably 100 more cases that we don't know about, or we only know very minute details of, which in itself is terrifying.
I got some big trucks hauling milk in the background. That's why I keep hitting my mute button.
That's okay. Just quickly, let me say a massive thank you and a good evening to Ian so forth. He sends us a £10 super chat. Thank you. He said, "This tenor isn't getting anywhere near cults. Thank you, Ian. Thank you so much. Absolutely, yes. If there's one thing that Adega and I can impress upon you this evening or this afternoon is be very, very careful who you put your trust in, especially when it comes to cults. If it sounds too good to be true, it generally is. And you spoke about people being filmed, and we talked about Scientology doing the very in-depth interviews. And once you kind of give up this sort of information, it will always then be used against you for blackmail. It's yeah.
It's easier to control someone when you have them by their emotions than it is when
Mm-hmm.
you have them by logic. And you put them in an emotional state to where they feel desperate, fear, um, those type of dark emotions. They for the most part, really have a good grip on you. There's a few strong ones that get away, but it's pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's see what else we've got. Seven Viking says, "Oh no, Adega's being stalked by a cult disguised as milkman." Gun Bunny is absolutely right. She says cults love to prey on the weak and the lost. Absolutely mentioned it earlier on as well. This is very much a staple of Hollywood. People go and they pretty much lose themselves in pursuit of trying to hit it. Make the big time, and they will sell their soul if it means that they can be a star.
Yeah, and some of them will freely admit it. Over the years, I've talked about a lot of this stuff. There's what's his name? Dang it, he was in the last Indiana Jones. It was Indiana Jones's son. I'm trying to remember his name.
Oh,
No, that's not it. You know what I'm talking about.
yes, I do. I can't remember
I don't know, but either way, you can catch him because he did Disney stuff, and and some of you will know there are the occult aspects of the Disney stuff, and he will say, "This isn't a joke for me. This is real life," and it's all the MK Ultra. What do they call them? Sorry, my mind is. Remind me never to spill Red Bull on myself again. I did it before the show, and it's throwing my brain out of the. It hits the cues to keep them in their place, locked in tight by their mind control, and he was one of them. But there's others. You can see Katy Perry,
Mm-hmm.
who has been completely obliterated. And then oftentimes these people will go through their nervous breakdowns when their programming shuts off.
Well,
But it's all a cult thing. They all go through this eventually.
yeah, so they've said that a lot of especially young actors and actresses and ones that are attached to the House of Mouse have gone through this, and I think a lot of them do seem to have breakdowns. We've seen Britney Spears over the years has had a lot of trouble in her past with what's happened, and a lot of young actresses, a lot of young actors. If I remember correctly, Joaquin Phoenix and his family were actually attached to a cult as well when he was much younger. Hence the names. That's why they had such odd names. We had River Phoenix, Joaquin Phoenix. I think who was Leaf when he was younger.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's absolutely correct.
Mm.
Did we miss a couple super chats? I know you highlighted them.
We've got a couple more. So we've got from Salty Texas. He says, "What's the difference between a religion and a cult? A religion drinks wine, and a cult drinks Kool-Aid." That's dark,
Yeah,
but you're not wrong.
right.
And the chat was saying Shia LaBeouf. Thank you, chat. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yep, he is the one. But
Well,
yeah, he's been screwed up.
well, since we're talking about drinking the Kool-Aid, even though it wasn't Kool-Aid, if I remember correctly, shall we jump onto the People's Church, the People's Temple, which is obviously better known as Jonestown?
Lead the way.
All right. So this one, I think, is probably if somebody says to you, what do you think of when you think of the word cult? I think this is probably, if not because of Manson, this will be the one that really kind of jumps into people's minds because it was so horrific. So this is one that obviously took place over quite a while, and it had a lot of members, up to they claimed up to 20,000 members, but they believe it was more likely between 3 and 5,000 altogether. When they had it, but this was started by a guy by the name of Jim Jones. He wanted to kind of build I suppose it's like a utopia. He wanted a kind of a uh, elements of Christianity with a kind of socialist ideology, and generally that's a very bad idea, as we've seen multiple times. But
Never ends well.
it never ends well. But he's obviously kind of managed to convince a lot of people that this was a good idea, that this was something that you could really kind of build if everybody came together. And he did actually manage to convince a good number of people to move in. Is it to Guyana, I believe? And that's where they set up this very remote settlement out in the middle of nowhere. They called it Jonestown. It was very much a commune. Everybody was expected to pull their weight, and I think to begin with, people were actually pretty pleased with what they had built. Everything was working very well, until obviously, as we've seen multiple times, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and Jim Jones was no exception to that. He was somebody who really wanted to control people, and eventually, obviously, I think it was Congressman Leo Ryan was the one that kind of stepped in and wanted to take this place apart. They realized this was getting way out of hand with the ideology that he was pushing, and more people were coming forward and saying, this is actually a terrible place. People are working dusk till dawn. There was accusations of abuse that was going on. People wanted to leave. They weren't allowed to leave. And eventually it all came to a head when he kind of convinced his followers to commit a mass suicide / mass murder.
A couple things that I know of this. First off, and it's not as well known, but some of you will know this. You could search it up. It's easy to find. There was a lot of LSD involved, and the research that has came out, it was the same LSD that Charles, from the same cookery or whatever you want to call it, same factory as what Charles Manson was using, which has the same source, which is from the CIA. And there are recordings at the Jim Jones place when he gave orders, because not everyone wanted to drink the Kool-Aid. The vast majority didn't. Most of the people had injections in their back. They were forcibly killed. There was only a few that actually drank the Kool-Aid. But there was one person, you could hear him in the recording saying, "Let him go, leave him be." He was a CIA op. That was his supplier.
Yep.
So some say, there's no solid evidence in this, so this is all hearsay. Some say that this was a CIA test to see how well they can use various different things like loud music, loud noises, repeated noises, because they had his loudspeaker going 24 hours a day almost at that compound of him either talking or them playing music. The drugs and the constant propaganda hitting him, they wanted to see how well a mind control operation could go. And eventually, just like you said, people were they were going out in the jungle. They sent hunting parties after these people that escaped and killed them out in the jungle because they just had enough. They were tired of sleeping out in the open, being forced to work all the time, watching their kids being whipped. It was horrible.
It was, absolutely. And if you've ever heard the recording, I I can't say I recommend listening to it, but it is certainly eye-opening to hear what's going on in the background, and all the time you can hear the people screaming and people pleading for their lives. You can hear children crying, and you can hear over the loudspeaker another one of Jones's sermons. He loved the sound of his own voice. He was incredibly egotistical, and ultimately he was also a massive coward because he refused to take the poison himself, and I believe he shot himself or had somebody else do it for him.
Right. Yeah. It was horrible. And the fact that he even killed the senator and all his people.
Yes, on the runway, if I remember correctly. Yeah. They tried to leave, to return back to the US, obviously, to report what was going on. Jones sent a armed group after them. There was a shootout, and then when they realized that once word got out of what happened there, it was only a matter of time before either the army or somebody else moved in to break up this operation. Hence, that's the tragedy that happened next.
Right.
Yeah. Dave Bob says, remember the media coverage at the time, a lot was covered up. Yeah, that I believe. And we're only still finding, bits and pieces of what actually went on. But it's definitely one of the most well documented. The other one that I believe is probably very much covered up would obviously be the Branch Davidians, David Koresh's one in Waco. Psychodorf says most cult leaders are cowards. Absolutely. Salty says there's a crazy documentary on Jim Jones. It's something that sticks with you. Evil exists. Absolutely. And as Adega correctly pointed out, how much of this was actually planned? How much did they know what he was doing and kind of, if not encouraged it, then at least let it play out to see, what the actual results would be from this almost kind of mass brainwashing of people.
Right.
How many people could you convince to do something like this? And how easy would it be to sway people? But at the same time, one of the things that we have to remember with Jonestown, at least, it wasn't individuals, it was families that were there. So, the whole families moved in. It wasn't just, people that didn't have anybody around them. And once your kids are involved, that's a whole different level.
Right. Right. We're a group like Heaven's Gate, where it was individuals, and everyone that lived in the house ended up dead, and that was all you could tell. It was all volunteer, where you have family members involved. That emotional tie, again, you do it through the emotions. That when they saw their family members being abused, it started causing the divisions within them. If it was a solo person, they would take a lot. But messing with family, that bond rarely breaks. It has to be something very horrendous to break that, but still.
Should we talk a little bit about the Heaven's Gate, since that's one of the more bizarre ones, at least for me, because that one is almost it's such a weird mix. So it's kind of, there's a little bit of Christianity, there's a little bit of kind of New Age mentality that they mixed in, and then there was a whole big chunk of ufology as well. So
You
it was
probably
almost,
know a lot more about that one than I do. So if you wanted to get into it, I'd be limited to how I could help, but that's fine.
this one I don't know as well. I mean, I know it mainly because of the crazy photos, obviously, of Marshall Applewhite.
Right.
So whenever you see him, he's always got that kind of weird, wide-eyed look in any of the photos that he's done. And, that famous one that I put on the thumbnail where he's got his hands thrown up. And it's it does kind of boggle the mind sometimes that people will actually fall into this sort of thing. But apparently he was quite persuasive when it came to this, and he was very much one of those. He was into a lot of the kind of New Age teaching. He was very much into science fiction. He was a big fan of Robert Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke. That's where a lot of his kind of basis came from. He was very much into kind of the idea of a resurrection, but it wasn't just kind of Christ coming back, but it was Christ coming back and coming back with UFOs. It was a whole kind of weird mix that they came up with and managed to convince people that this was going to happen, that if you joined this cult, then you would be one of the very few chosen ones. Once the end of times happened.
Right. Kind of odd. It seemed like it was, and this is a joke, but it seemed like they were pioneers for the SJW because they all wore the same color, had the same haircut, all had the same weird face. It is definitely, you could see the cult resemblance.
You can absolutely. And Plains Escape Corner says the craziest thing is the people left behind who still believe. Yes, that is how deep this I suppose you could call it programming, because that's pretty much what a cult is at the end of the day. It's convincing people of an idea. But this one was very bizarre, because, as you say, I believe that eventually, when it came to it, he convinced his followers that the only way to get off Earth was to do this kind of mass exodus, where they had to obviously take themselves out. He said that the spaceship that was going to take them onto the next stage of their journey was trailing behind the Hale-Bopp comet, and this was their this was their moment. This was what they were waiting for this whole time. And
The exaltation, yeah.
Exactly. It's so bizarre how he managed to convince them to take an overdose. I think they mixed it with applesauce or pudding or something, and secured bags over their heads, and just waited for the inevitable to happen.
See,
But
they
as you
went the nice way. They just went to sleep with bags over their heads.
exactly. But
Weren't
you're
chased
right.
down with rifles or stabbed in the back with a needle, but
That's a certain level of dedication that you've got to inspire with people. Terrifying, but bizarre. And yeah, they were, as you say, all dressed in identical black shirts, and I think black trousers they had on, and black
yep.
brand new black and white Nikes.
Yep.
It's one of the things that a lot of people remember, that they all were dressed in this same. I suppose you could class it as a uniform, I guess.
Right.
But yeah.
I heard that the people that knew them, that weren't part of the cult, the people in the community that stores it, they said they were nice people, just a little weird, but all of them were nice, which again is odd.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, they weren't horrible people. They weren't doing particularly horrible things, but they just had this bizarre belief, and very very unwisely decided to follow him. And but it's so bizarre. I believe one of the more high profile people that were involved with this was Thomas Nichols, who was the brother of Nichelle Nichols, obviously known for Uhura. Yeah.
Nosferatu, you're a sick man. I can't wait to join the Ring of Power cult. Sick. Maybe you're beyond help. I'm sorry.
We've got some great people. Reading the comments at the moment, you guys are absolutely on fire today, so thank you so much. And Nosferatu says almost everything that people share a common interest in is a cult. Realistically, that's a fair way to look at it. Shield Wall of Dragons, great to see you. They have huge ego investments in the cult. It's hard to admit they fell for a scam. Yes, and Adego, I think you were talking about people that kind of survived, especially things like the Heaven's Gate and obviously Jonestown. And we do have testimonies from people that managed to survive, and the way they talk about things that happened, some are incredibly regretful, but some talk about it almost wishfully.
Right. There are still Manson followers.
Mm-hmm.
And How, why, I don't know. Um, I was recently, sick me, going over another serial killer, and his wife. Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember his name. I did it recently. I went over it. Um, but it's just amazing to me that some people will so willfully go along with things that they know are degrading, are painful, both physically and emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
It's how they form an identity to themselves. And then when that person is gone, for some, it doesn't break. Their programming sticks. Other people, it takes a while, a lot of support um, to come around. Like this one wife of this guy, uh, he was a truck driver and went around taking people out all along his trail of, he'd put them in the back of his truck, use them for a couple weeks, and then murder them. And when he went home, he did some horrible things, BDSM stuff with his wife, and she hated every minute of it. She went along with it. Now she's an advocate for the abused, but it took her a while to regain her personality because it was lost in him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sad. Some people can get out of it. Some people that mental break is near permanent. It's very hard for them to recover.
Is this what they call the cult of personality?
Some is, some isn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cult of personality, of course, is like with the Nixium
Mm-hmm.
and Jim Jones, those type. But the other one I wanted to get into, Mothers of Darkness, that's not a cult of personality, that's a cult of power. Uh, so it just depends on which group.
Right. Tell us about this mother's.
This one, I think, is probably one of the deepest seated, more centralized of all of them, even more so than what people would say. And sorry if you're Catholic, uh, or any of the other religions that people have. And remember, it's rumors that they have things going on. But this one is fairly well. You can follow the trail, and it leads you to the same place. I want to get the name of this. Mothers of Darkness. They usually meet at a place in Belgium, Chateau Emeroy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, did you hear me talk about these guys before? I can't remember if you had or not.
I don't think so. No.
Right. This group meets at this chateau, very secluded. It was originally created years ago for a Prince Philip. He's part of your royalty's family, kind of distant, it's like a third cousin or something. And this place right now has the highest security that I know of. It's almost like a Area 51 where it's got motion, sound, uh, there's heat detectors all around this place.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some people that talk. And again, it's like I mentioned before, when there are people that have been in and get out and they talk, there's always embellishment. And sometimes there's a grain of truth, and you have to get enough people or enough things around to find out how much truth is in it. But we are talking about the most elite in the world. These are people that Epstein wished he could associate with, but was never given the opportunity to, because they are they look down on the rest of humanity, literally and figuratively. Uh, it is the cult that is mostly led by women. And at this chateau, there is a room, and it is documented, but they don't allow anybody in. Uh, but there have been some things that have got out where they call it the room of 1,000 points of light. And this is
Ah,
where, yeah,
yes. I do remember you mentioning this. Yes.
this is where once upon a time, the United States has a president, the first Bush, where he mentioned out of the blue, and no one understood why, 1,000 points of light.
Mm-hmm.
But when you follow the trail, his connections with the CIA, with people he knew, his wife, who looks just like Aleister Crowley for some strange reason that her mother may have had opportunity to sleep with the guy in some wild, evil orgies. Again, follow the trail. This place is a place where they would do high satanic blackmail.
Mm-hmm.
It was reported about 20 years ago, maybe it was 25 years ago, the locals were so up in arms, they had to get the police on this, and they found a patsy. There were children, many children that disappeared. And they tracked it down. They found one guy, and again, if you follow the trail, look at the courts and everything, because everyone knows this is a cover-up. They captured a guy and said he was the one who did it, but it was a cover-up for all these children that they brought to this place and did these high sacrifices to blackmail world leaders, not just the little Hollywood starlets or the people in the news media, to blackmail them to follow along and say all the same fun things that all the other people in our media, the BBC or CNN, or where they push the same narrative because they've been blackmailed, some of them into it. Other people just believe it and jump in wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a ranking system that has come out, and they start off with acolytes all the way up to mothers of darkness and to goddess, and there's always one goddess and there's one god among this group. And they're very demented. When you're in the Mothers of Darkness, you are the leaders of the sacrifice. You initiate people into the group by various different, use your imagination, because you are probably correct. And I'm as dark as you can get, you're probably correct. These people do these things to the innocent as well as to each other. And when a goddess passes away out of this group of Mothers of Darkness, they need another woman leader. She actually is the one to kill, take the last breath of that person to become the next goddess, behead, and in some reports, they devour the previous leader. This is how, and again, this is how depraved they are. And I won't tell you how I know these things are true, but you can look at the Biden stuff that has come out and some of the videos that have come out with him running naked with anyway, I'm going to leave it alone. Now I'm talking Dad Biden, not the boy Biden. Where I had been shown and told
not the one that lost the laptop, yes.
No. I had been shown and told these things by people in very high places years ago, and people just looked at me and said, "No, you can't be right. That's nuts." Well, you want to see the video? They got the videos now. You can see them. So these are real things. And this Davos thing with this World Economic Forum, these are like underlings. There may be a Mother of Darkness among them just to control that group. We're talking about the ones that are, when people say Illuminati, it's a plaything to these people. So yeah, they are the ones who, in my opinion, and from what I've learned, are the ones who pull the strings with all this darkness. The ones who influence things. It's like 33 levels above the people who are making our movies that we're mad at. They say a word and then it cascades down and can never be traced back, except there's one of two places where more missing people, more missing children end up than any other world is Washington, D.C. And this place outside of, I think it's Mokus, it's in Belgium. And it's obvious what happens. And it's very sad. And these people, one of these days, need to be at the end of a rope.
Yes. And we talk about these things on Dark and Disturbing because we want to shine a light on this. And as Adega correctly says, a lot of people just do not know what is going on or don't want to know what's going on. You've a lot of people would much rather just kind of go through their lives and pretend that everything's fine, and really deep down inside people are good, but we know better, don't we, sadly?
Right. There is a thing that I you know this, as dark as things are, and as difficult sometimes it is even in our own community, we got to let it go, because the best way to combat this is to build the better community.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear that little impression on your heart, you get that little flash in your mind when you're on the street or in your car, something that says you need to turn now, you need to go back, or you need to run, do it. And then make sure you stay in groups that are associated with doing things better, being better. Because delving into this stuff, I talk about these things, and it really does put a pit in my stomach. I get sick doing this. But it's like you said, it's important to know that our world is not all puppy dogs and roses. And that when you have these impressions that this is something you need to avoid, maybe you should listen to that. But also, I see this in because I go in many, many different circles, writing in the comic book groups, different where there's divisions that don't need to be there. I could name names of people in the comic book industry right now where they are at each other's throat, but they're all part of Comicsgate, and they shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
We should be building together. The unity is what makes us stronger. And when you have such darkness out there, they thrive off of the division, and we shouldn't have it.
It's funny you should mention that, because I've noticed this a lot, at least in the last couple of months. There is a lot of division amongst people where it wasn't before. Now, I don't know whether this is because there's a underlying current that people are picking up on, and it's manifesting in if people are a little bit more on edge because they can't articulate what is actually wrong. But it does seem to be people are picking up on this, and they know instinctively that something is going wrong, but they don't know what it is.
Right, right. And oftentimes it's like that thing that I said, people will follow their heart. Sometimes the ego gets insulted and it drives the wedge. And like I said, with this specifically, I'm thinking of some people in the comic book industry that I know, where I wish I could take them aside and say, you know what, you guys are creators. You shouldn't be destroyers. You shouldn't be divisionists. Get over it and make other people happy. You know. So we point these things out just to know where the division can lead, where you need to protect your children from, or your. I'm not a grandparent, fortunately, but I'm at the age where it could be. Your friends. And hold on, value the relationship that you have, and build other ones. Stop tearing down each other, because that only suits their needs.
Yes.
It allows the Hollywood usurpers to be able to continue to destroy things that we love. Where a unified front would prevent that, or we could build something better.
Yes, I would also say be very aware of what you're being distracted with. So if there is a brand new, very important story that just pops up on the news all of a sudden, what is it that they're trying to drag your attention away from? I think that's probably the best way to look at it. And Rod Thunderheart says, Purple Valkyrie, have you heard of the Trilateral Commission? It sounds familiar. What about you, Adega? Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah, they are. You hear of the World Economic Forum. They are basically the ones above that. It's a smaller group, and their security is a lot tighter than what you hear of what's going on with the World Economic Forum. They pull more strings. Uh, it's a bad group of people. Those are the James Bond villains.
Mm. And Nasvarati, I want to say a huge thank you. You had some fantastic comments today. Says this is pretty cool that Valkyrie sheds light, given her geekdom platform. Hats off to you. Well, thank you. I couldn't do this without Adega, and we also have some other fantastic people that join us from time to time to do these. But I'm very lucky that I have people that are willing to talk about this with me, because it is important. Yes, we can talk about anything to do with geekdom or films and TV, but this is life. This is, I think, much more important than what's going on the screen. It's what's going on behind the curtain that I think we have to focus on.
Right. And hold on to each other. Don't let things that some of these massive influencers who you think are part of Comicsgate or various different other groups that you all know, don't let their divisions cause you to be divided.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Don't.
It leads to unhappiness and wasted energy.
Yeah, don't follow the crowd, I think, is what we're trying to get across. Yes, look after yourselves, look after your friends, look after your community, but be sensible about it as well. Just quickly, I want to say a massive thank you and good afternoon to Mexican Iron Man himself, Puppy, who sends us a $9.99 super sticker, and it says #1 fan. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Rapid Slut, she says, mostly a nerd, absolutely. Solcy says, be the leader you think you need. Great advice. Dave Bob always brings wisdom. He says, think for yourself. Absolutely. Don't follow the crowd. Guys, community is incredibly important. Even a community like YouTube, we do need to be there for each other. We do need to check on each other and lift each other up, no matter what community you're a part of, or maybe you're not part of any particular community, you just have a lot of friends. It's always important to check up on people. But before we wrap up this show, and I've had a fantastic time getting to talk about this, so thank you, Adega. What have you got coming up? Because I know we've got a very special something coming up very soon.
Well, just go along with what we were talking about. I have an article with top 5s that will be out within a month or so, I think. It depends on how quickly they do it, because they've got everything. And it talks, especially at the end of the article, about the things that we do. And I'm going to see if for some reason, if they will let me share clips with various different groups, because I'm quite fond of it. And it's about how we are all connected and why it's important to have that connection be one of good faith and good impressions. So that should be coming out. And I got this little thing with books and Kindle. My book Evolution is out.
This little thing, he says.
Yeah, Evolution, it's a sci-fi series. The first book is out in hardback, and that's only going to be out for a limited time. Then I'm switching it to paperback. So give it about a month or two, and then I'm gonna switch it. And then in a day or two, The Blood Witch will be out. But on Monday, on Memorial Day, I'm going to have a series of streams because I can't sit down much longer than an hour or two. And I'm going to have people who know my work. They're going to come on, and hopefully all of them who have said they would, but usually expect about 10% of all the people you invite. Hopefully get them on, and we could do sound bites. I want people to hear from people who know my stuff, what they think of it. Because
absolutely.
I have yet to have anyone say anything bad. Everyone loves my work, even some big wig writers and other people that have read it, and they're just impressed. And I am gonna, again, I do this periodically, pat myself on the back. There have been people who compared me to Frank Herbert, though I don't get into as much detail because I don't like doing that. But well, you know my stuff.
I
Um,
do. I know your stuff very well.
I prefer people to have their minds take them into places more than me tell them where they're going to go. Uh, but yeah, on Monday I'm going to have a heck of a day. 3, possibly 4 different small live streams where I'm going to have guests on that are going to say, "Well, this I know about the Blood Witch, and this is why I like it. This I know about evolution. This is why I like it." It'll be the time if there's going to be any spoilers, we'll give spoiler warnings and let like you yourself say whatever you feel about it. Just let it out. And then hopefully people will allow me and I'll make sound clips of it because I'm in this for the long haul. We have so much destruction going on our heroes and our modern fandom that we need not only to reclaim what they had, but to replace what we've had. And I am making an attempt to bring something better, to show people what it means to be good people, to show what real people will do in hard decision making times, not the Mary Sues and people who are designed to be super without any effort. So my stuff is really good. I'm just going to tell you flat out, in all humility, it's really good. And I'm happy to share it. And Monday is going to be a big day for me, whether or not people show up or not. Still, it's important. And I'll have all the links and everything you need if you wanted to be a part of it, you wanted to get into these universes. I'm happy to have you along for the ride. So, yeah, that's what's going on.
Absolutely, and guys, I couldn't think of a better time to get familiar with Odega's work. As he says, Evolution has just been released in hardback. Get it, please do, because it is a fantastic book. I have a couple of copies in paperback. I've got a hardback version that is on the way as well, and I can't wait to have more of Odega's books because that is how much I respect him as an author and love his work.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I really do.
You're welcome. So, guys, we have got a very busy weekend coming up. I will make sure that everybody knows where all the links for Monday will be. I am honoured to get to join Adega as well to talk about the Blood
I'm
Witch.
honored.
So that's going to be a lot of fun. But also, I want to say a huge thank you for today. I really, really love getting to talk about the more disturbing side of human nature, and I can't think of anyone better than Adega, because Adega really does know
Again,
his stuff.
she thinks of disturbing things, and it's Doctor Doom and Dig It. Yeah, there we go. All
But
right.
you guys are amazing. We had some fantastic comments in the chat today. Nosferatu, thank you. Rabbit Sludge out. She's great to see you. Thank you, guys. Really, really brilliant comments. Thank you to Salty and Dave Bob. Fantastic, guys. Thank you. Not sure what we're going to cover next month. We'll have to put our heads together. I think we're going to have a few more people join us next month as well. So we might have a little bit more of a panel to talk about it. But we'll definitely be back probably the same time to talk more dark and disturbing and to delve into true crime because it's a subject I do love, as you've probably noticed.
I have a question for you, real quick. It's about one of your chat members, and I've
Of
seen him
course.
around. Maybe you know. I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure out his name. Is it that ad that should not be?
Oh, the pad that shouldn't be.
Oh,
Yes.
the ad. The
Yes.
ad that should not. Okay, now I got it. Gotcha.
Yes. Fantastic name and very,
Yes.
very knowledgeable. So thank you. Thank you, Dad. Some great comments today as well. Really appreciate it. And Rod Thunderheart, great to see you as well. So, guys, have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday. Have a wonderful rest of your week. If I don't see you again, I will be back on Friday, as always. Tomorrow, we've got a big show coming up. Cameron Pasha is going to be joining on
What?
Salty Texas channel. We're talking paranormal, so that's going to be a really fun show. Haven't spoken to him in a while, so really looking forward to that. And we've got lots more videos coming out. We've got more Supernatural Showdown to record as well. So it should be a really good week. But guys, take Adega's advice. Look after yourselves, look after each other, and keep in touch, because I think we need it at the moment. We really do.
Be the hero you want to be.
Well said. Take care, everyone, and thank you.